Good evening and welcome to the Gold, Goats, and Guns Hour here on YouTube and DLive. My name is Tom Luongo. We have a lot to talk about tonight. And tonight, we're going to talk about tariffs, we're going to talk about trade, and we're going to talk about why Donald Trump is still an economic ignoramus. Moreover, he's not just an economic ignoramus, He's an economic ignoramus of the highest order. And it's going to be kind of, well, we're going to talk about a lot tonight. So let's just get into it. So let's remind ourselves that if this is the first time you're here, please give a like and subscribe down below. We're over 2,500 people on the channel. Really appreciate everybody who's shown up recently. It's fantastic. We're going to, you can support the channel. I don't have super chats turned on because I don't believe in giving Google money. So if you like what you hear tonight and you want to donate, there's plenty of ways to do so, all linked in the description of the video down below. All right, let's get to the topic at hand. Donald Trump is an economic ignoramus. Today or yesterday, he announced that he was surprisingly going to install 25% tariffs on something like another $250 billion worth of trade between us and China if they don't agree to a trade deal with him by May the 10th or whatever. So, what's important to understand here is that Trump thinks tariffs work. They don't work. They're already not working. He's already losing support in the farmlands, in the farm states that won him the election back in 2016 because his tariffs on soybeans are gutting our ability to export. He thinks that somehow a balance that trade, only one side of the ledger on trade matters, which is the trade account. When we lose, he thinks that everything in trade is a zero-sum game, and that somehow us exporting dollars and getting goods in return doesn't work for him. Now, I've covered this many times in the past, but I need to cover it again tonight because it's very important, because it's going to tie into a lot of other things that I've talked about previously. So, and how it all ties together, because I can tell you what I'm seeing. And what I'm seeing is, as we've said many times, that this is all about dollar liquidity. Okay? And Trump has been railing about the Federal Reserve raising interest rates because he wants to run a trade and tariff war on the entire world and sanction anybody who uses the dollar in a way that he doesn't approve of, and yet thinks that the only way that he's going to be able to do that is through zero-bound interest rates, continuing exactly the same problem that has put us in the situation that we're in today. He obviously doesn't seem to understand that you can run a $400 billion trade deficit with China when you spend $1 trillion more money than you take in. It's pretty easy to do because that's what all that extra money buys. What do you think happens with that money that the government spends? It goes into people's pockets and they buy iPhones and they buy cell phones and they buy cheap Chinese crap at Walmart and they buy lumber and they buy pork bellies and they buy all this crap. They buy whatever they need. Okay, and they import technology that's manufactured overseas. And he thinks that because we design and build many of the things here and then ship them over to China to have them assemble them and then ship them back to us, that somehow we're losing money on this. He's a moron. I mean, seriously, the man is an ignorant moron. And he obviously failed basic freaking international economics while he was at Wharton. And I've railed about this since before Trump was elected. I said his inherent mercantilism is a real Achilles heel, and it's going to do massive damage to the world economy. And it is. And it has. I'm in the middle of writing a blog post now that I don't know if I'll finish it tonight or I'll finish it tomorrow. We'll see. But I find, for those of you who are regulars on my, and subscribers to my Patreon, you know that I do chart analysis regularly of like the Dow and gold and all these other things, and give you some quantitative statistics about what I think is happening within the markets. And I can tell you that the volatility statistics on the Dow since Trump went on his trade and tariff war have more than doubled. Okay? If I showed you a chart of the Dow and just like see before and after, it's like it's unbelievable what you see. And this is all Trump. And it's all counter to what he actually wants to achieve. You can't win a trade war. Everybody loses in a trade war. Trump thinks that, well, we'll come out $100 billion ahead on trade, so therefore we're winning. No, everybody loses. Because at the end of the day, when you prosecute a trade war, the people who pay for the tariffs are the importers and then the consumers. And Trump doesn't understand this basic understanding, this basic thing. So what he thinks he can do now, he thinks he can get away with this because the S&P 500 is at an all-time high, and the Dow is at an all-time high. But as we've talked many, many times on this channel, the S&P is rising precisely because I'm not seeing any comments on YouTube, by the way. I'm going to have to reload that. The S&P 500 is rising precisely because he's prosecuting a trade and tariff war around the world, which is creating uncertainty around the world. And because it's creating uncertainty around the world, it's drying up dollar liquidity. People are afraid to invest in dollars. They don't know how to do. They don't know what to do. Because every day Trump turns around and adds some other thing that will criminalize your behavior for using dollars. And if that's his goal, well, that's his goal. But I know that's not his goal. He doesn't want a stronger dollar. He wants a weaker dollar. He wants high protection tariffs and a weaker dollar. He's a mercantilist. This is the hallmark of a fundamentally mercantilist mindset. And he thinks he can win on exports. We're going to export more. We're going to build more here and export it all around the world. Right, Don, we can do that. There's nothing wrong with that idea. But you don't do that by manipulating the currency and the tariff structure. You do that by actually reforming the structure of production here at home, which you're not willing to do because you're a fucking coward. Because you're just like everybody else who's ever occupied the White House or has ever tried to every other national leader that's blamed the other guy. Because it's easier to blame China. It's easier to blame Europe, Germany. It's easy to blame everybody else as opposed to yourself. The reason why things are the way they are here in the United States is because costs are too high. Costs are too high because we spend too much money. We spend more money than we take in, and therefore the debt rises. And the amount of money flowing through the economy is far greater. Inflation raises the cost of everything, and we then export the value, and then we then use that, and then we have to pay higher prices at home. We're all impoverished, and we can't build anything here. Tariffs do not protect the American worker from multinational corporations using third world labor. It's horse shit. It's horse shit. The reason why the multinational corporations moved their operations overseas is because labor was too expensive here at home. Period. We wanted too much money for the value created by the American worker. That's it. That has everything to do with government policy and the structural inflation over time and the massive malinvestment in uneconomic projects all around the world. Period. That's a horseshit argument. It has always been a horseshit argument, and it always will be a horseshit argument. You will never look, dude. The Swiss have a really high, they have a really high value labor force. They have a really strong currency. They don't have protection tariffs. Guess what? They don't have a balance of payments problem. They don't have crushing national debt. Tariffs are a tax on consumers. They're a tax on the very people you're trying to protect. The steel and aluminum industries here in the United States don't want Trump's tariffs this time. Okay? The dairy farmers don't want Trump's tariffs this time. The soybean farmers are drowning. They're all going bankrupt. We're already at record levels of farm bankruptcies in May than we saw last year. And he's going to increase tariffs on everybody else. It's all bullshit, this whole argument. Globalism is, the low tariffs are not the globalist problem. The central banks are the freaking problem. Okay? Altering the structure of production by having philosopher kings decide on what the rate of interest will be is the problem. Government spending $4 trillion a year on an income of $2.5 or $3 trillion a year is the problem. Subsidizing education at unbelievable rates and healthcare at unbelievable rates is the problem. We have a service economy. The trade deficit only talks about goods exported. We don't have a current account problem. We've got a trade deficit. It's not a big deal. It's a horseshit argument. It always has been. People defend, Tenjin says, I don't understand why people defend trade wars. I guess it's all 4D chess. They defend trade wars because it sounds good. It sounds like he's defending you. He's not defending you. He's making your life more expensive. That tax cut, he's already destroyed the tax cut. The money that you save in taxes, he has spent by raising the prices of everything we import from China. We're not going to all of a sudden tomorrow start building all this shit here. The structure of production is still too expensive. If that were the case, it would be happening, but it's not. We're not winning this trade war, and we're not going to win this trade war with China. Okay? And at the same time, all you're doing is creating uncertainty around the world. All you're doing is making everybody not want to use dollars. Which is, by the way, and since all the world is indebted in dollars all the way around the world, it's creating there's a massive synthetic short against the dollar, and it's creating artificial demand for it. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy that Trump is going to continue to complain about all of this and blame China for the problem. Right now, what's going to happen is the following. He's going to slap this tariff on. That's going to give China every opportunity to do exactly what they want to do, which is to devalue the yuan by 10 to maybe 15 or even 20%. That's what's going to happen. He's not going to complain about that. Then he'll call him a currency manipulator. Then he'll cut off a Chinese company for importing Iranian oil from the SWIFT system, or seize CNBC's onshore dollar holdings. We're going to have that. Okay, the Tariff of Abomination fomented the Civil War. The Hoot-Smalley Tariff Act fomented World War fucking II. We're gonna do this again? Do we never learn anything, or do we just constantly just blame everybody else for our own ineptitude? Because that's what we do. And we're not the only ones that do it. Everybody does it. Everybody does it. All right, let's see. Paying American workers high wages doesn't work. Harry, I didn't say it didn't work. It's not that they're paying. Jim, you do this every fucking time you come into my stream. It's really fucking sad, to be honest with you. I'm dead serious. Because it's not that high wages are the problem. It's that it's the value for the wage that's the problem. Employers can only afford to pay $6 an hour or $4 an hour. Because they can't make any money otherwise. Understand how expensive it is. Think about how expensive it is to take the stuff that we design and build over here, ship it over to China, have them assemble it and ship it back to us is still cheaper. Is still cheaper than just building it here than just assembling it here in the first place. Now, why is that? It's not a matter of if the American worker produced the value. It's this. then they would get, then the business would have never left. It's the same argument against minimum wage. I'm a business owner. I can afford to pay. I have work that I can pay $6 an hour for. The minimum wage is $7. What do? I can't employ anybody at $6 an hour. I'm not allowed. So what do? I either pay the guy under the table or I work longer hours. Or I don't expand my business. It's just that simple. This is just basic freaking everyday, boring old economics. They're not going to move their production back here. All that's going to happen is China's going to devalue their currency, which they need to do anyway, because they've got a friggin'. You're feeding China's ability to inflate away their corporate debt problem. If you want to win the trade war with China, cut tariffs to fucking zero and allow their friggin' shadow banking system to implode, because the PBOC wouldn't be able to devalue the yuan. But look what's happening all around the world. Emerging markets are blowing up. All their currencies are blowing up. They're going to defend. They need to try and defend their currencies as best as possible. So they're going to. And they can't, because there's so many other corporates are trapped in dollars. They have to pay off debts in dollars. They're either going to default on those dollars, very possible, or they're going to devalue or they have to devalue their currencies in order to continue to keep their exports running. So what's China going to do? China's going to devalue along with them, because actually China does most of its fucking trade with the rest of the world and not us. At the end of the day, dude, we're only about 15% of China's trade. So it really doesn't matter. To be honest with you, the Asian tigers are far more important. The Southeast Asian tigers are far more important to China than we are. And they don't, and we've been doing this song and dance and blaming China for our problems for 15 years now. The Republicans do this all the fucking time. It has nothing to do with them. It has everything to do with us. Trump is running the biggest fucking deficit the world has ever seen. Period. It shows up as a trade deficit because he's printing too many goddamn dollars. Because he goes to Congress and doesn't have the friggin' political will to say we're cutting spending by 10%. Hell, Rand Paul can't get through a systemic off the top 1% cut in spending. 1%. If everybody could live with 1% less money. Every lobbyist who walks into his office, he's like, can you live with 1% less money? Well, yeah, we could probably manage. Okay. Well, then do that. That would be an 8% decrease in next year's budget. If we did that for 5 years, the debt would stop rising. And then the incipient inflation that comes along with that debt isn't there either. Trump's a coward. What he needs to do is overhaul the entitlements. He won't do that. That's politically beyond the pale. All he can do is rail about China and go on a trade war. It's dumb. Fiona Whelan, I ran a small business out of my home. I couldn't milk goats, take them to the farmer's market and produce products that nobody else in the entire area. The entire area wasn't producing what I was producing. High quality Greek yogurt, kefir, this, that, cheeses, ice cream, all this stuff. We worked our asses off for 5 years. And all we did was lose money on paper. And the only way I made any money was to not pay income taxes on my salary at Newsmax. Couldn't run a small business. Prohibitively high. You got to hire a guy for minimum wage, it costs you $20 an hour. By the time you get done paying Social Security, Medicare, so that's actually $15. It's $7.50 minimum wage means you're paying him actually closer to the actual cost of something like what, $15, $16 an hour in actual cost? To what, sweep floors and jockey a register? And then there's the legal costs, and then there's the HR shit, and then there's the this, and then there's all that. All that has to be factored in. Every fucking bit of it. The only reason that corporate America's got any profits whatsoever is because the Fed's been giving them money hand over fist. They don't know what to do with it all. So they stuff it all back into stock buybacks. They goose the dividends. They give it back to shareholders. They don't know what to do with it. They don't want to invest it. There's no place to invest it worth the shit. Go look at it. Gross fixed capital formation has been garbage for the last 11 years. It's all just central bank funny money, just keeping everything afloat. While everybody is scared to death, the central banks and the politicians and everybody else, scared to death of an asset deflation, which is exactly what needs to happen. So that real people working for real jobs, producing real wealth, they might actually get fucking rich if the freaking cost of living dropped by 30%. When GDP is your guiding light in this life and 25% of GDP is government spending, it's not real. When you add deficit spending into GDP, it's not real. But that has a real effect in the real world because those dollars flow into the economy, raising the cost of outbidding yesterday's. Look, like everything else, central banks, they produce tomorrow's money, spend it at yesterday's, they take tomorrow's money and spend it at yesterday's prices. It's what they do. And if you don't think that this has a mass, it's going to have it's literally creating the very conditions that Trump is trying to avoid, which is a stronger dollar. He's getting a high stock market, which he stupidly believes is a vote of confidence of his ability to manage the world economy because he's so fucking brilliant. Oy, shit. So if Tenjin's right, man. If tariffs were going to bring manufacturing back, it would have already happened. We've tried this many, many, many times. It never works. Stoyanovich, you're right. Trump just plays cynical politics. I won't take the Israel debate. I just won't do it. So Fiona Whelan says, if he goes this way for a while longer, I'll have to throw in the towel on my business. I know. I had to go to a business with no overhead. Honestly, I had to work. I sat there looking at my career path as a chemist now 8 years ago. And I said to myself, I can't do this. Said, you got skilled, knowledge is atrophying, this, that, everything else. I'm like, I have to get into a business where I have no overhead, where I have no dollar liabilities, where I don't have any employees or stock to manage or any of this other shit. I have to just, I have to monetize my head some way and figure out how to do that and continue to do it. The U.S. needs a trade deal with a Farage-run UK. Well, that's true. It's permanent debt then? Borrow from the future to hold the present down? It's permanent debt because they can't pay it back. The numbers are too astronomical to ever pay back at this point. We're not going to ever pay this debt off. You got to be out of your freaking mind. They're just going to keep rolling it over. That's all we ever do. And what they're scared to death of is a rise in interest rates, which will then consume more of the budget, thereby blowing out the budget deficit and thereby spiraling the whole system out of control. While Trump tries to, did you see this crap? He wants to 25% gas tax in order to pay for infrastructure rebuild, while he balloons the fucking military budget by 25% at the same time. I mean, are you kidding me? Seriously, are you fucking kidding me? attention at this point at exorbitantly low interest rates. Now, most of the debt we have has been issued under a zero interest rate regime, where interest rates were as low, coupon pay rates were as low as possible. They consume, I think it's around 8 or 9% of the budget. Okay? That's up from 5% because the Fed raised interest rates off of the zero bound by 2 points. Raise it another 2 points and it doubles. Once it reaches 20%, Katie, bar the door. There's no stopping it at that point. The system collapses. A debt-based economy is a reality of a fiat-based currency system. What is debt, Mark? What is debt? Debt is pulling forward future production for today's consumption. That's what debt is. You are taking a mortgage out against your future, the value of your future labor, for a pile of money today to either invest in. Well, ultimately, you're investing in some aspect of your own life that you think will give you a greater return on that investment, or which includes consumption. Because you make the argument to yourself that by consuming this, by going into debt to go on vacation, this will actually help me be more productive in the future in some nebulous freaking way, by making me happier. Gas tax is a big no-no. Yeah, you think? Trump thinks that, we're going to just going to pump a bunch of oil, and oil prices here domestically are going to go down to the level that they are in Russia. Yeah, the difference is that we pump oil out of the ground at $50 a barrel or $45 a barrel. They pump it out of the ground at $9. Okay? Am I for free trade? Absolutely. I'm a libertarian, dude. I absolutely believe in free trade. I don't believe in government managed trade in every way. In any way. I don't believe in government currencies either. I would prefer private currencies, prefer private banking. I don't want central banks. I don't believe in, it makes my head hurt to know about the government trade account versus the government current account versus the budget. What the fuck do we need all this shit for? Oh, right, because the government controls a goddamn currency and they've destroyed it. That's why. We have perfectly fine. Free trade does not suck. Free trade is absolutely the hallmark of a viable human and sustainable human organization or organized society. Free trade. Neoliberal free trade is not free trade. What the neoliberals and the corporatists call free trade is not free trade. That's managed trade. That's something fundamentally different. Let's get our terms straight so we understand what we're talking about. Okay? Let's get our terms straight. If the currency was backed by gold and all the government did was no, we wouldn't have this problem. Yeah, running up a credit card will keep the party going temporarily, which is what we're doing. We can keep unemployment relatively low, yes, and then it all blows up. Every 5 years or every 10 years, Argentina just blows up. Jonathan, I'm not talking about the election. I could give a shit. So just leave it be tonight. Look, I'm dead serious. I'm dead serious when I say that you don't win trade wars. Everybody loses. Period. And the people who lose the most are the people who are supposedly the ones that are going to benefit from it. Because, look, if you're a net creditor nation like Russia, let's look at what Russia's done. Okay? The U.S. put sanctions on Russia. The EU put sanctions on Russia. The Russians turn around. They put counter sanctions on European businesses. The American Russian trade is so low that it doesn't matter. But let's talk about something that's really important. And I've used this example before. Let's talk about dairy and agriculture, right? So the EU, many of the major EU countries exported a lot of food to the Russians prior to 2014 when they put sanctions on after the reunification with Crimea, right? No big deal. So the Russians, the EU puts these major sanctions on things like Russian technology and, all this stuff. Siemens can't sell them, power turbines and all this stuff, all this really important high-end stuff. And the Russians just turn around and go, we're not buying French dairy anymore. And then because the Russians are a net creditor nation, because they run a trade surplus, because they run a current account surplus, because they run surpluses, because they export more than they import, and because they have positive gross fixed capital formation, even though the ruble was under serious pressure, they turned around, and because they run their government properly, they run their government so that the government's constantly running a small budgetary surplus and only run a budget deficit when the price of oil collapses quickly, as it did in 2014, and even to a lesser extent as it did in 2018. So they diverted in this situation. They said, well, we're not going to buy any European dairy. And food prices went through the freaking roof, and everybody was screaming. It was terrible. And it wasn't the right and frankly, it wasn't the right thing to do. But this is what the Russians did. The Russians then turned around and diverted money that was being sent to the oil industry to subsidize production in order to use oil as a geopolitical weapon, took some of that money and diverted it to the agricultural sector. Now, the Russians don't have anything close to a free economy. Never have, never will. And immediately we saw an immediate groundswell of Russian agricultural output in a way that we haven't seen in 40 years. The Russians now produce all their own dairy. They produce pretty much all the meat that they need. They now export meat. They now are the biggest grain exporters in the world. And guess what? They're the biggest grain exporters in the world at the same time that the United States' grain exports are floundering under Trump's continued tariffs. Because while we say, okay, so you got to pay us a 10% tariff on X, Y, and Z, and the Chinese just turn around and say, fine, we're not buying your soybeans anymore. We'll buy them from Brazil. They're a bigger producer of them anyway, and we also will just shift away from buying soybeans. We'll, buy more palm oil. We'll shift away from using soybean oil. We'll just buy more palm oil from Malaysia or whatever, because they're a substitute for one another. This is what happens ultimately at the end of the day. So. So, wasn't a gas tax what started the Yellow Vest? Yes, Bruce, you're absolutely correct. Absolutely correct about that. It was a 25% tax on diesel after telling the French people for 20 years that we have to get off gasoline and move to diesel-powered cars because of global warming. Then they turned around and said, well, no, you need to move away from diesel cars into electric cars because diesel cars, pollute too much. And they lost their freaking minds. So Stoyanovich reminds us that not only are the Russians now exporting more than they ever have before, they're exporting more than they import, what they used to import, and they advertise it all as completely GMO-free, and they're picking up American exports left and right, which is exactly what's going on. And when things are normalized between Russia and Europe on the agricultural front, those markets will the Russian markets will pretty much be closed, except to high-end, irreplaceable French dairy and things, French agriculture, things like wines and stuff like that, which are, very specific to where they're grown. But I got news for you. You grass feed your cows, butter is butter. And the Irish are exporting their Kerrygold butter over here, and our dairy farmers here in Wisconsin are all going broke. They're going broke at record rates. Milk prices crashed after the sanctions went in place over over Crimea, the knock-on effect has been that. Has been this is why Trump won Wisconsin, because he promised to, do something about this. He promised better relations with Russia. He promised, he almost said for all intents and purposes to end sanctions on Russia. So. What do I think about getting rid of money and going back to barter? Barter is barbaric. You need a medium of exchange. You need a universal medium of exchange. We just need money to not be corrupt. I believe that corrupt money begets a corrupt society, especially a debt-based money that continually has to inflate itself in order and to inflate a credit cycle that is pernicious ultimately, and hollows out over time people's incentive to work and their incentive to and it creates a high time preference lifestyle. When you know your money is going to be worth less tomorrow, you want to get rid of it. The encouragement of a high velocity of money, which is the hallmark of a debt-based currency. High velocity of money is the only way, and high turnover, money velocity, high turnover is the only way the credit cycle can maintain itself, because at that point, since the whole system is levered up, if there's not constant demand for the dollars, or the constant demand for the currency in the form of a high money velocity, eventually the system has to deflate. Now, what's been happening with money velocity since 2008? It's been dropping like a rock. You can go look up the Fed graph of this over at the Federal Reserve, and you will see without too much trouble. You will just go look up M1 or M2 money velocity. Not hard. Anybody can do it. Anybody with and you'll see that they can't get money velocity off the ground. And there's a reason for that. It's because the credit system is broken, and all they can do is pump base money into a system to try and create and push on a string to try and create more debt. But they can't create more debt because we live at debt saturation. So now what? What's the next thing? What happens after? The whole system has to collapse. Either they have to hyperinflate or the whole system has to deflate. One or the other. Hyperinflation and hyperdeflation are two sides of the same coin, or as Tom Stoppard would put it, the same side of two coins. So, and that's why there's plenty of consumer inflation. The Fed just heuristically adjusts it all. Package size keeps getting smaller. Has anybody noticed that? You guys live in the United States. Jars of peanut butter have been cut in half. For $3 now, a jar of peanut butter is either 14 or 16 ounces. For $3, a jar of peanut butter used to be 22 or 24 ounces. It's to the point now where my wife makes her own coconut butter, right? Because she's allergic to peanuts. She makes her own coconut butter, which I'm not allowed to eat, by the way, and the shit's fucking awesome. Right? She takes flake coconut and whips the friggin' shit out of it in her Ninja blender and then adds some salt to it, and it's fucking amazing. Guess what? When you buy flake coconut and do it yourself, it's not that much more expensive than peanut butter. Coconut, for fuck's sake. It's like 20% more than peanut butter is, unless peanut butter is on sale. And I've noticed it's on sale less and less and less because it's in my house less and less and less because my wife doesn't buy it unless it's BOGO. And I see it everywhere. Ice cream is only a quart and a half now. It's no longer a 2-quart container. Everywhere. Shampoo bottles are smaller. Everything is smaller. The only thing that's the same are half gallons of bleach, half gallons of ammonia, shit like that. It's the only thing that's the same size. Everything else has gotten more expensive. Price per calorie. I gotta believe price per calorie, the food's going up in price. It is a good tip, by the way. Using flake coconut and whipping and beating it really hard in your blender. You got to be very careful how you do it. It's not foolproof or anything. You can easily cause it to separate and all sorts of shit, or worse, blow out your blender by just beating the crap out of it. It takes Camille like an hour to do it. 5 minutes on, 10 minutes off, 5 minutes. Whatever. She whips for a couple of minutes and stops, lets the blender cool down, does it again, lets everything cool down, does it again until it whips up. But yeah. You can get flake coconut at Amazon in bulk and then whip it yourself. It's good for you because it's fucking coconuts. I get it. I just buy the shit in Amazon, Tension. It's not like it's, it's the same price that, it's not like it's anything weird, right? Did you vote Libertarian for Kerry? No, I didn't vote for Johnson. I voted for fucking Donald Trump. That's why I'm so angry with him. See, utilities here for me have been steady at around 12 cents a kilowatt hour for quite a long time now. But then again, I'm rural, and I still think that our electricity is somewhat subsidized under old FDR rural electrification rules. But I'm not sure. Yeah, you pick coconuts out at the ground in Southwest Florida. Yeah, I'm just not. That's not what I'm not even talking about that anymore. So. My heart doctor is happy that ice cream containers are smaller since I scarfed the whole thing down in 5 minutes. Yeah, you and me both, which is why I stay far away from fucking ice cream. I used to make my own ice cream with my goat milk. I used to make a goat milk, duck egg yolk, cooked custard ice cream. Tongue-waggingly good, dude. We'd go and I get blueberries out of the garden or mulberries out of the garden. Ridiculous. Get some coconut milk, get some coconut milk and some shredded coconut, make a coconut ice cream. Yep. What do I think of the United Nations? I think the United Nations is terrible. Serves me right for voting at all. Thanks, Stan. I appreciate that. Love you too, dude. Fuck. Neocon Trump is losing me fast. Neocon Trump lost me a long time ago. The LP died when Bob Barr and Bill Weld arrived. Actually, Alex Grant, what I would say is that since I was there at the time, the LP died when the LP of Florida was taken over by a bunch of neocon Republicans, which I almost stopped that takeover. If I had truly understood what was happening, I would have actually campaigned to become state chair back in 2002. More vociferously, I would have won. I only lost by one vote. I had a won. And I would have kicked them all out of the fucking party. And then I would have gone to the 2004 convention when they destroyed the fucking platform. And as one of the state chairs of one of the three biggest party delegations in the fucking country, I would have stopped that shit cold and thrown all the fucking neocons out. I didn't quite understand what was happening. I'm not gonna lie, it was a missed opportunity. But I was there. It was very close. I spent the next 2 years on the executive committee fighting just a ridiculous fight, and then eventually just stopped and said, this is done. So, never be more happy. You will not be healthy or vegan, friends. That is a fucking lie. We are carnivores. You should be eating, if you're not eating something close to an all-meat diet, you should be. You should be on a ketogenic diet, mostly meat, some vegetables, whatever your colon can handle. But honestly, you'll live a long, happy life with mostly meat. Good night, Mark. Thank you for stopping by. James says, I don't belong to groups because I don't subscribe to group thing. Well, there you go. That's part of the problem with the Libertarian Party. So does everybody else. How do you herd cats? Interesting place, Malaysia, says Stephen Burnage. They prosecuted and tried Bush-era officials for war crimes in their absence. No doubt losing 2 national airplanes was a coincidence, though. Yeah. I don't eat fast food either. Well, every once in a while I go to Wendy's. Leaning Tulsi Gabbard, even though I hate the Democratic Party. You and me both. I'm actually thinking about registering as Democrat so I can vote for her in the primary, just to like fuck the world up a little bit, because they're gonna do that here. They're gonna run a whole bunch of friggin' progressives here and try and run them as Republicans in order to try and get them through. I don't see why we shouldn't do anything else. Meat is murder. You're whatever. So is, by the way. So is honey. So's grass. You can't live a life without, you cannot live your life without any kind of acceptance of the shadow inside of you. You have to realize that you do evil in this life. We all do. And ethical veganism is a fucking scary religion. And I mean that in all sincerity. I'm not being like blunt. I'm not being like flip here or anything. Ethical veganism is, you have the choice to do whatever you want. I consider it fucking evil, because it's ridiculous, because it's the groundwork. It's the same groundwork. That's the same groundwork that's laid for all of these other utopian fantasies, that we can live a world with just love and with just, and we don't have to accept the fact that we do bad things in our lives, and that we're the goodies and you're the baddies. Fuck you. No, you're not. You're just as bad as I am. You have the same capacity as I am, and I do, and everybody else does. And when you understand that, when you accept that, then you can go forward as a healthy and relatively healthy and balanced individual who understands that he is capable of doing horrific things, and then seeks not to do them, as opposed to just justifying all of your actions to yourself by saying, well, it was for the greater good. Yeah. How many millions of people have died because of that? Not doing that. Yeah. Keith Kufu, I'm running both YouTube and DLive at the same time. So I simulcast. Yeah. Barter is terrible. Collectivism is death. All right, so looking at some stuff over on YouTube. Trump lost me when he lost his pair and agreed to attack Syria 2 years ago. Yeah, it started for me then. I gave him another 6 months. Yeah, he's not even stopping the border invasion. So, whatever. All right. Where are we? 47 minutes. You guys got anything else interesting to say, or can I cut out early tonight? I usually do this for about an hour. But I've said everything I want to say about Trump, about Mr. Tariff, and trade wars are easy. Because the Orange Obama... Wow. What I can say is this. Okay, so somebody brought up earlier that that the Syrian army has started an offensive in Idlib with Russian air support, and I fully what that means to me is that the Russians and Turkey have finally come to the conclusion that Turkey and Qatar have finally come to the conclusion that they can no longer protect their pet animals in Idlib, and that they're going to be wiped out. And there's not a whole lot the United States or Israel is going to do about it, because Turkey's now, if Turkey wants to survive, if Erdogan wants to survive, and if Turkey wants to survive the hybrid war that's being prosecuted against them by the United States, they're going to need the Russians, and the Russians want they want Idlib and Hama provinces in Syria cleansed of these assholes. So, well, good evening, Indubitable One, watching me for the first time here on DLive. Thank you, I appreciate it. Everyone should just, I see, now Keith Kufu, there you go. I do farm some of my own food. I raise my own dairy goats, though I don't know for how much longer, because I'm getting been doing it for a long time now, and I'm really starting to have second thoughts about whether or not I should be eating dairy, to be honest with you, and whether or not I should just have a handful of wethers out there to have a goat roast every once in a while. You do raise my own ducks for eggs, and we have gardens, we have fruit and potatoes and stuff like that. So I don't have any problem with that, and I don't have any problem with all that. But yeah, and we shoot deer off our own property. So there you go. Erdogan seems skilled in maneuvering. I'm expecting Turkey to remain a key player in the region. I think so as well. Gaius Vindex says, the intermission in a hockey game, so I'm back. Which hockey game? I'm unfortunately not following the NHL anymore, even though I did for a long, long time. Yeah, no, that's not happening. Is there anything left in Syria that anybody is interested in? Says Tim Cutler. Yeah, the geography. The Iran wants to push a gas pipeline, oil and gas pipelines, all the way out to the coast. Why you think they bought a lease on the port of Latakia for the next 49 years? Of course, the United States and Israel want to stop that. So the Saudis. They're still, it's still Syria. And it's terrible that things have worked out that way, but it's Syria. I know. So, but that's a welcome sign, actually. The Russians have held off attacking that. I think they've done so for the purposes of trying to keep the Americans and the Israelis from losing their minds. And now that they're pushing forward, they're basically saying, "Look, we're done with you people. We're going to do what's in our best interest at this point. What's in our best interest, what's in Syria's best interest, is to wipe these animals off the planet." The 1980s, the NHL died in the mid 80s. No. It was good. It was good after the lockout, though. We can have a long discussion about the enforcer, the loss of the enforcer, the PCization of the NHL all day long. I'll be happy to do it. I got a lot to say about it. I said a lot about it when I used to work for AOL back in the before time, but not doing it now. Whose article is that, Stoyanovich? Alistair Crook is fantastic. Yeah, I haven't read that article yet. I'm going to need to do so. So, but yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, Crook is so Stoyanovich over on DLive is linked to the latest article by Alistair Crook on is there a path out of ever escalating tensions in the Middle East? I'm going to read it. I don't know about you, but you should read everything that Alistair produces over Strategic Culture. He's excellent. So, yeah, Crook's articles are always a must read. So, all right, guys. I don't know that I really have very much else to say tonight. I mean, believe it or not, but I mean, the situation with China and the trade tariffs is idiotic. We're seeing, I mean, other than the fact that the closer we get to the European parliamentary elections, just to keep this in your back pocket, and there's one last thing before I go, to keep this in your back pocket, think about what's happening. You've got India's elections are continuing to go on. I don't know what's going to happen with Modi. He'll probably win, but as always, you never know. And he's been running the nationalist card as hard as possible to try and to win that election by playing up the nationalism card against Pakistan, but we don't know. The thing is, though, if he comes up short, or not short, but if he comes up wounded, it could have an effect on, it could have a serious effect on U.S.-Indian relations, and not for the better. Because Modi is probably the closest thing to a pro-American prime minister India will ever have from this point forward. Am I going on? Let's see. So, and then the next thing is to think about the European parliamentary elections are enormous. I talked about the situation with the Brexit Party polling now above 30% and continuing to move forward. And I think that that's going to be an enormous thing. Fiona Whelan, by signing the decree on granting Russian citizenship to Ukrainian breakaway republics, Russia clearly shows that they are done trying to please the collective West. Yeah, no, absolutely. That was a great move by Putin. It needed to be done. You needed to break the impasse over the Donbass and stop playing games. It's now time to start putting pressure on Europe to either fish or cut bait with Ukraine. If they're not going to do so, then let it go and be done with it, and poke Bolton in the eye. Because, if we're gonna continue to escalate things over there, then it's time to give those people a way out of their gulag, because the way the Donbass is situated at this point in this kind of nebulous, state of not being officially anything, it's really harming them, and that needs to end. And with that, with effectively offering them dual citizenship with Russia, it puts them under Russia's protection now, because they are now Russian citizens, and the Russians can now officially move to defend them if Kiev continues to shell. So by doing this, Putin is in many ways accelerating a potential solution. No matter what the rhetoric that comes out of Zelensky's mouth or Merkel's mouth or anything else, it's absolutely moving the ball in the right direction. And the Americans, I'm sure, are fuming mad about it. The lesson from the last few weeks: close out of your liquid positions Friday afternoon, because Monday's going to gap one way or the other. Yeah, because Trump can't keep his fucking mouth shut. Hey, Tom, Marco needs to lose the next Senate election in Florida. Well, no, he's needed to lose every Senate election in Florida. Guess what? He's not going to lose. I don't vote for him. How quick would the public demand these wars if they called up a military draft? And if they called up a military draft? About 20 seconds. I agree, Andreas Waltz, that Putin is going to need to start saying... Well, he started the process, I believe. So, there you go. All right. I think that's about it. Corruption has become a big problem for Modi, and it could hurt him. You're absolutely right, Stoyanovich. Indubitable says, hey man, I love your show. A real picture of world events. What a breath of fresh air compared to the stale air of the ambient MSM. We do aim to please here at Gold Goats and Guns, and we only tell you the unvarnished truth as I see it. I'm not always right. I do my best. And at the end of the day, all we can do is our best. And we're going to disagree. We're going to say some things that are going to make... I'm going to say things that are going to piss you off at some point. I say it to everybody here that shows up. I'm going to say something that's going to piss you off. You personally. If I didn't, I'm not doing my job. It's just the way it is. But at the very least, you also know that is what I actually think. And yes, with a lot of swearing. And by the way, the tip jar for swearing here on DLive is 10 Lena. So just, to get with the program, we have a tip jar here at Gold Goats and Guns. There you go. All right. I think we're done. So if you liked what you heard tonight, please give a like and subscribe down below over on YouTube. That'd be great. Sign up for notifications as well. Click the little wacky bell button thing and do the thing. You guys know the drill. You know the routine. You can follow me over on my blog at tommalongo.me. You can also follow my work, my paid work over at Strategic Culture Foundation, as well as moneyandmarkets.com. I post on Strategic Culture. I write it tomorrow. They post it sometime during the week, usually later in the week. You'll see both of those articles go out. And of course, you can follow me on Twitter whenever I get up the arse to fucking tweet, because Twitter sucks and I don't care. At TFL1728. You guys take care. Talk soon. Keep your cigar.